So I'm Ben Lennard. I'm 27 from Essex. So regarding your question, the thing that made me do this is that from a young age I've been hiding in a lot, and it's kind of what I've got used to. And there was one day in the recent years that I decided that enough's enough. It came across on another show where I found that they was doing a show around mental health and stuff, and I thought I've never spoken out before, and I thought the best way to do it is to help other people as well. So helping other people was kind of my motivation personally. So I thought the first time speaking out is going to be in front of millions of people. So it's quite daunting, but whether it's in front of millions of people or just that one person, I think taking that first step is probably the biggest thing you can do. So once I'd done that show, it gave me such a boost in myself, and to see what it was doing to other people and how it was helping them. It was crazy, because not only was it helping me, it was helping everyone that was watching. Then I came across another show that was related around porn addiction. So I kind of thought this is amazing, because it's my last piece to the puzzle that I need solving. And it's something that I never thought I'd speak out about, I'll be honest. But I thought, what better way to do it than just dive in there, and give it all I've got. And I'm glad I did it, because, not everyone will have that confidence to go on TV in front of so many people and speak out about that stuff. And I kind of felt like I had to be the voice for everyone that, don't have the confidence to speak out. And if they see me doing it, hopefully they will do it as well.
Yeah, I commend you for your bravery and your courage to do that, because it is such a taboo topic, isn't it? I mean, it's really difficult for people to talk about sexuality, and we need people to start talking about it so that we can claim our power back around it, and we can not keep it in the dark. So how old were you when you first started watching porn, and how did you find it initially? How did you stumble across it?
So I think I was around 10, 11 years old when I started watching movies which had quite explicit scenes in it, and I thought I just want to see more of it. It kind of sucked me in, and it kind of influenced me to go in to watch something more explicit, more harder graphic. Shortly after, I'd say maybe around a couple months. I can't really remember back then, because it was such a long time ago. I can't even remember what I had for dinner last night, so trying to remember back from when I was little was quite hard. But so I stumbled across pornography online. Friends had it, and when I started seeing all that kind of content, I just had this addictiveness to it. It was okay at first, because I thought, at such a young age, I'm a teenager, this is what we're going to do. What teenagers out there, haven't thought about it or watched porn. But I think the more time went on, it was kind of getting unhealthy, to the point where I was so used to it, but I didn't realise the issues until later on. And
So you said that other kids were watching it. So it was quite normal and quite common. Most of your friends were watching it.
yeah, I mean, that's what teenagers talk about when I was at school, and everyone's raging about it. And I thought being a teenager, that's just a normal thing. We're going to go through that stage of life. But
And was there any peer pressure? Was there any peer pressure around it?
I wouldn't say as much peer pressure, no, because it was kind of my own doing to have that addictive personality towards it. I found out that it was eating up most of my time, and I knew there was kind of an issue there at first, but I didn't really think much of it, because when other people talk about porn, I'd jump in with a conversation, or jump in with all what you're watching, or send me that, or send me the link for that. Do you know what I mean? But, they all seem to have it under control, unlike me.
So do you think it was your ADHD that really caused the porn addiction more than the dopamine of the porn?
See, the thing is, I never knew I had ADHD. Growing up through school, I was always having this self-hatred because I never got anything. I'd always have this personality where I was so attracted to the negative and the bad stuff. And yeah, it weren't until my recent years when I started having addictive behaviours, with, things like alcohol, pornography. And I didn't realise why I was having such an addiction to all this stuff. I was like, so what is going on with me? Before I told you that I had participated in the mental health show. So that was on the BBC. When we filmed the pilot, which is basically, you film a show and then that gets sent off for commissioning stuff like that. So in that one we filmed, the psychiatrist said to me, psychiatrist, is that the word? Did I say it
Yeah,
right?
I think it's
Psychiatrist?
well, there's the psychotherapist, the psychologist, the
Yeah.
psychiatrist. There's,
So
I don't know.
they basically turned around and said, I want you to go off and get tested for ADHD. So
Right.
I did that off camera, and I was like, wow, I got tested for it, and not only did ADHD like come back, it came back with learning difficulties, dyslexia, and there was something else I can't remember. But once I got that
Distraction?
diagnosis, it all made sense.
Yeah.
Ever since I got that, and then I went back on the show to start the therapy sessions. The more I had the sessions, the more I was learning about myself and the reasons why I grew up, having such hatred towards myself, feeling like nothing, and why am I so addicted to all these things. And it was such a big eye-opener for me because I didn't realise until the recent years. So I've gone a whole life undiagnosed, questioning myself. So it's quite an amazing story to have, because I feel like the uniqueness of it is sharing my journey from the start for myself. So like I'm doing my journey, but taking everyone with me at the same time and helping others. So it's been the most like incredible journey to have, and to be able to help people that were or in the same space as me is incredible. Like the feeling is amazing.
Do you have a lot of guys or girls that are addicted to porn reach out to you and ask for your help, or?
Yeah, I mean, there has been quite a lot of, social media attention after appearing on the Lad Bible and obviously appearing on This Morning as well. A lot of people have reached out to me across social media, and, people are wanting me to, come on their podcast to share my story, or radios, papers, things like that. And I love helping people, and I've also had like a massive response from like the general public as well. So I feel bad because I can't get back to everyone. I can't help everyone. I can't be on everything. But there's only so much I can do. If I had the time, I would love to help everyone. But if I can help people where I can, I will. And things like
And I
doing
think you
podcasts.
exist.
That's what I was just about to say. Yeah, things like doing podcasts and like radio shows, TV shows. I feel like that helps a lot of people, So if I can't help them personally, at least I have things that will help them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we go back to the porn, you kind of said that you started off with things that were quite vanilla, but then you had to move on to more and more extreme things. Was that because you needed more extreme to get the same kind of hit?
Yeah, I mean, starting off, it was okay, but, I just wanted more. There was so much out there that I just wanted to explore. There's so many different aspects to it that I just thought, yeah, I really want this.
Yeah. So how many years were you addicted to it?
I'd say from when I started the porn when I was at a young age, around 11, moving on from there, it was okay within I'd say the first year. It was okay. I just felt like it was a normal thing, you know but I was so blind to how addictive it actually was, because the more time went on, the more addictive it was getting. So yeah, I think that aspect is quite a difficult one.
And what kind of stuff did it change for you? Like your mood or your energy or how you felt about yourself?
To be fair, it was very hard for me, because growing up watching it, you kind of build that mentality of you want to be like that, and I think that's what the hardest part was, because when it came to, the age of 16, when I was finding sexual partners and things like that, I would always compare myself to porn. And it's
Yeah.
the same on the other hand as well, like with women, they
Yeah.
would think, I need to have a beach body, I need to be perfect, I need to do this, when actually it really damages your mental health and self-esteem. And especially people with like ADHD as well, it can really ruin your mood. And I think people with ADHD already have that low self-esteem as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So
it's quite a big aspect to that that's quite upsetting, to be
So
honest.
when you got into relationships and you started to get sexually active, did that put a lot of pressure on you then? And did it affect being intimate?
It did. It does definitely cause performance issues. I can most guarantee that as well, because, it gets in your head. It's like a psychological thing, because you've
Yeah.
fed yourself so much. And also where I was going through that period in my life where I was having that ADHD undiagnosed and I didn't know, and I was feeding myself that self-hatred. It was also the same with the sexual side of things as well. So yeah, it's not a very nice mix, let's just say that.
And did it affect the way that you looked at girls or what you wanted to do with them or to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with women, when I was in a relationship, I tend not to watch porn because, I had that guilty conscience of, I watched it, I think maybe like, I'm not too sure, I can't really remember, maybe like once. Because I remember that one time when I watched it and, it only sprung in my mind recently. And I just remember, thinking back to it like, I should appreciate her and her body. Why should I be sitting here watching other people when I should be focused on her, and that kind of just threw me off because like that was my guilty conscience coming out, I suppose. And yeah, I tend to like hide it and compress my emotions in relationships, and I never really opened up about that much, to be honest.
Yeah. So it was completely hidden until you came out recently.
Pretty much, yeah. I think my family took quite a shock to it because, one minute, they say, "Oh, where you going?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just off to do a show." And then they're like, "Oh, you're going live?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then all of a sudden they tune in and then see that. They're like, "Whoa." Like, they wasn't expecting it, but I was a bit worried what they would say or what their reaction would be. My family's response was really good and supportive. I guess I was just fearing the worst.
Yeah.
So, especially one of my uncles as well, because one of my uncles he's quite a strict man and things like that. And his response shocked me the most because he was like, "It's so good that he's helping people," and I was like, "Oh wow." Do you know what I mean? So it kind of gives you that little confidence boost to
Yeah.
carry on and help other people.
And had your family, your parents ever taught you about online sexual content or pornography?
I never really spoke to my family about this kind of stuff. I always found it weird, but I think now I've opened my eyes to it. I think definitely, a younger generation as well should most definitely talk to their parents about these things if they need to, because there's so much people don't educate on, the sexual side to things of life. And I think social media is definitely one of the biggest mental health crises at the moment because people always compare themselves with other influencers and it's quite mentally destroying, and especially like people with like financial difficulties as well, and they're being sexualized by these women to sign up to their OnlyFans and their sex content pages and things like that. I think that's a very big aspect that isn't looked into or educated enough, because I feel
Yeah.
like for me people need to educate on the reality, because back in the day things were so much different to how things are now. So I
Yeah.
don't really know what the education does these days. I don't know if they do or they don't. But, for me, if they don't, I think that would be a very important aspect to look into.
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to achieve, Ben. Get education around for parents how to talk to their young people about pornography, about sexual content, resources for young people so that they can download them and get lots of information if somebody isn't talking to them, to know what's right and what's not okay. And this, I think it's 43% of young people now are accepting strangulation as a normal sexual practice, and that has gone up from zero to that figure in the past 10 years.
And
So
I think
it's,
people need to really be careful as well, because I get that people are into all kinds of naughty stuff now and kinky stuff. And I think the most important thing is communication and like consent, because, there's been times where in the past I've tried something, nothing major, but I've done something towards a woman and she was okay. She was okay with it, but she just felt a little bit disheartened when I didn't check with her first, if that makes sense. Luckily enough, it wasn't nothing major, it was absolutely fine. But I think if someone else done something worse thinking it was okay, the other person could think the worst of it. So I think it's very important that communication and consent and making sure that you're both comfortable with it is a massive important factor.
I mean, I teach about consent and it's so, so important. It's so important with consent to understand trauma responses, because if you do something to somebody and you haven't had consent prior, they can go into a freeze response and then they can't speak. Their voice goes. They just kind of like accept it and they're not consenting. They can't actually say no. So I always encourage young people to have a really clear conversation before, like you would if you were having a business agreement or going to the hairdressers. It's like, would you go to the hairdressers and say, well, just do whatever you want to me? No.
Yeah.
So you'd set your boundaries, what I like, what I don't like, what I'm comfortable with. Ask them, have you had any uncomfortable sexual experiences before? How did that make you feel? Is there anything I can do to make you feel better? It's just encouraging healthy, respectful conversation around sex and consent.
I think like there's also like example basically like I had a car accident many years ago, right? And I was driving like a bit of an idiot, hands up. I had a car crash. Luckily no one was injured. It wasn't as bad. But it clicked in my head that what about if there was a family in that car, And from now on I drive sensibly. And that kind of example in the sex way, because what about if you do that to a person, but they have a traumatizing past that could trigger them? Do you know what I mean? So you have to take that as a lesson, and then going forward, you know what the sensible move would be. Do you know what I mean? So the best example I could use was my car accident, because that is kind of like the same steps that I'm trying to get to. But it's just that you need to understand and communicate with a person, because you have no idea what they could have been through, and something like that you think's innocent could be a massive trigger point in trauma for them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a massive factor. But also I think is a good thing that the government have this Online Safety Act back in July. And I think the traffic for pornography has gone massive downhill, because, no one wants to put their IDs or personal details in it, because people, when they use porn sites, is more of an anonymous thing as well. So I think, for me it's good because it helps me, and for other people they might get angry with it. Content's always going to be out there, but I think it's a good thing that they've put that barrier there for
Yeah. I mean,
people like me who are suffering.
I love the Online Safety Act, but I do know that VPN use went quite up. Young people are very, very tech savvy.
Yep.
They can hide apps in phones, and if they want to keep something secret, they can. And in Louisiana, in America, when they did age verification, porn use went down 80%, but dark web activity went up. And of course, that's not a place that we want any of our young people on. And I really believe that it needs to be a two-pronged effect of online safety and education, so that they understand the different aspects around pornography, like the hidden truths and dangers, that things that happen to the actors and the actresses, what the effects are on porn addicts, what the effects are on viewers, and some of the hidden, like, ethical side of porn, like that actually about 50% of porn is actually human and sex trafficking, not prostitution. Were you aware of that kind of thing as well, Ben?
I didn't really look into it that much, to be honest. There's kind of a lot of reality things that I don't know, and was blind to. And the more I'm doing this kind
Yeah.
of stuff, I'm learning more about it. And I get that I've got learning difficulties, so it takes me a while to understand and learn things. But, it's definitely an aspect that I want to learn to be able to help people if that kind of thing comes up, I think it's very
So
important.
looking back, what do you wish someone had told you as a teen about porn?
I just
Is there
wish that
anything?
people would have told me the reality of things, and to kind of teach me how to use it in a healthy manner more than an addictive manner. I think
Okay.
that's probably what I would want to hear back then.
So is there any other message around porn that you feel you haven't covered today, Ben?
To be fair, the most important part was understanding it, understanding and recognizing an issue when it's there. Obviously, communication is very key, because, as we were talking about, communication and consent, I think that's massive. I think that the education side of things, that people need to learn the reality of porn, because porn is like fake, and is nothing compared to reality. So people need to learn that, the way you look, the way you do things is absolutely fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. Trying to compare yourself to something that is not really real, I think that can be very mentally destroying. So I think, we've covered
Yeah,
pretty much the
it,
most
it
important
is.
things.
Yeah, it is a performance, isn't it? It is people
Yeah,
acting and it is prostitution. So it's somebody engaging in something for money. It's not like they're actually, not always are they sexually attracted to each other. So it is, can be a lot of fake stuff. And I feel that sex, when it's a performance, isn't real intimacy. It isn't the best possible sexual interaction that you can have. And actually you have the complete opposite and just go into the flow and bring in soft, gentle, conscious touch and stuff, you can actually have much, much more powerful and much better sexual experiences. Have you
absolutely.
found
And I
that?
think people use medications as well. And I think that's what
Yeah,
that can be, when you're watching something like that, you're thinking how. But what people don't understand is in the acting world, people use so much medications and things to make that performance for, their show. And I don't think people really think about that too much. I think people kind of compare themselves rather than knowing the reality of it.
yeah, yeah. I'm going to be talking to an ex-male porn actor next week, and I'm going to be asking him all about different things that go on behind the scenes. But I think it's 90% of male actors use Viagra, erectile drugs, to enhance their performance and to make themselves look bigger as well. And then it can often stop working because they use it to excess. It's not a drug that young people should ever be really using.
Yeah, and I
And also,
think that's very important because, editing can be a wonderful thing. People can edit and make things look so much different to how they actually are as well. And I think, that's something to think about. And, with what you're saying as well, I also know some people in that industry as well. And, I want to reach out to them for some advice and personal things as well. I think that would help, you know, build my mentality back up. Also, I think, you know, even though I undertake therapy for my personal reasons, um, I think finding a sex therapist can also be beneficial because that's what I'm seeking at the moment.
yeah,
I get that people say so when people often ask me what are you doing at the moment and how you getting over it. It's kind of the fact that I'm just straight up and honest. I'm at the moment I'm seeking help. I'm trying to find that right therapist because you have to do your research in what that person has dealt with, what they specialize in, and you have to be comfortable with them. You have to find what's right for you, and you can't put a time on them things. And also, I think, with group meetings as well, if you're confident enough to do group meetings as well, I think that is very beneficial. I'm still seeking that as well. But for now, I'm just kind of distracting myself with being productive in life as well in things like that to distract me from wanting that so badly, like to watch porn and to find porn, and I'm distracting myself from that and using my time to do things that will benefit me.
yeah. And over the years, have you noticed a big change in content around porn and violence and things like that?
I think it's got, the more modern porn, they're trying to make it look more like a reality because I think when you watch a porn video you can see that it's acting, like you can see that there's a whole setup going on, you can see that it's scripted. But I think nowadays with like things like OnlyFans or them kind of content creators, they're making it like a reality kind of show, even though it's still the same, but they're doing like challenges that Paul wouldn't do back in the day. Or there's so much new things coming to this generation, and I think it has definitely changed from very long time ago till now because there's so much competition online now as well with all these creators, and they're like, oh, I could sleep with 1,000 men, and then another creator's like, but watch me, I can do 2,000 and do this at the same time. So I think is very much a competition now, and people are changing their ways about porn rather than back in the day when it was just very basic.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to the Museum of Pornography in Las Vegas, which is quite interesting. And it
Yeah,
starts, from the very early porn in, not early 1900s and how it evolved. It's very, very sad now that we've got Bonnie Blue and people doing those sort of really out there things. And they're kind of even being normalized and looked at as businesswomen. Whereas I really think there's going to be a big crash on the mental health of these people, and it's not going to be pretty. to yeah, and it really scares me that the guys are like lined up with masks on, and it's a really frightening place for our young people.
You know, young people have got it worse because this is the generation they're being brought into, you know, and they think that it's, you know, if you have a little daughter and she's growing up with a phone and she's seeing all of this, she's going to become addictive and, you know, feed her brain with how normal it is. She's going to normalize herself with this, you know, and you know you don't want your daughter to grow up, you know, being
No,
someone she's not, you know.
no, and I
She's
don't.
just
I
growing
wouldn't.
up being someone that she's seen online, you know.
And I have a 10-year-old, and I don't want him to be one of those guys queuing to do that to a woman. That's the last thing I want him to do. I want him to respect himself, respect his partner, or and have that consent conversation and treat them with complete utmost respect.
Absolutely, and I think the most important things, you know, are parenting and education, because you know I think they're the two biggest factors that a child will look up to, and you know it's good because you know I know people that have kids as well, and you know they're very well brought up, you know, because their parents teach them between right and wrong, and you know that's the kind of mentality you want your kid to grow up to have, you know, because I think you know most people these days in this generation are so glued to social media, you know, and I get that some parents might just let their kids do what they want, some parents might be strict, you know, but I think there's got to be a barrier towards right and wrong when these kind of things happen with, you know, sexual content online, and you know it can be very mentally distraught, and you know I wouldn't want my kid to grow up comparing themselves and destroying their own mental health, you know.
Yeah, because the porn industry is a 77 billion pound industry a year, and they're not going to want the Online Safety Act to stop them getting new clients or being addicted and losing all that revenue from the young people. So they will go around feeding it into them in other ways, I'm sure, you know. I really think it's so important that parents do have these conversations. I think it's
Yeah,
53% of parents give their children phones without any security or even any warning or anything. And that's really scary. And I think this is why we and you've got have got a big role in educating and getting this thing out there that, you know, talk to them, look at what they're watching, put safety and security up on their phones and support them as best we can.
exactly. I completely agree. I think, you know, from growing up, I wish I did the same. You know, I wish I spoke out about it when I thought it was becoming a problem, because I've let it completely ruin me. You know, and when I've dated in the past and, you know, I've had people that have left me or, you know, cheated on me, I compare myself that I wasn't good enough, and then I destroy my own mental health even more. And there's so many factors that it can stem from. It can grow into such a massive problem. And that's what happened to me. But, you know, for the young generation growing up, I wouldn't want that for them.
Finally, I'll ask you, do you think that you can use porn responsibly, or do you think that it is something that they really need to be educated on or come away from?
I don't personally think there's nothing wrong with porn. You know, I've got nothing really bad about it, but you gotta use it in, you know, a healthy manner, you know, and you know, like back in the day when you would have your normal porn videos and you know, you would use it in a healthy manner, you know, like if you want some alone time, like that's fine, you know, no judgment there, you know. But for people that
Yeah.
are sucked into the, you know, the most generational side of things and using it unhealthy, and you know it can ruin relationships massively as well and damage your own mental health. So you know if you're gonna use porn, do it in a healthy manner. That's all I can say. And never compare yourself either. Always love yourself.
Well, that's beautiful final words, Ben. So I
Thank you.
really thank you so much for taking your time to speak to me today.
Pleasure.
And I wish you all the best in enlightening and educating and preventing a lot of other people from going down dark places. So thank you for what you're doing.
You're very welcome.